Hello, welcome to ShropshireStart.com. My name's Jonny Drury and I'm joined by Shrewsbury Town correspondent Lewis Cox. Lewis, it was 5-0 last week when we spoke. They went to the leaders. We said they'd be happy with a point. They got
Yeah.
much more than a point. What a Saturday for Salop. What a week for Salop.
Yeah, I don't think anyone had chucked a couple of quid on that, had they? 3-0 away. They'd have been laughing to the bank if they had. Wow. Unbelievable day. Unbelievable win. Brilliant performance. I think you'd be hard pushed to find a better performance this season from Town. And as I wrote, one of, if not the best wins I've seen the club achieve in my time. It's got to be, up there in terms of recent years. You look at, the obvious one is the Paul Hurst season and the playoff semi-finals, but maybe those aside, a couple of big wins that season, that has to be, in terms of not just the result, the deserved result because of the performance levels. And by the way, the scoreline should have been more. It has to be right up there for recent years, I'm sure. League One leaders, away. Unbelievable, really.
Yeah, and like you say, it wasn't the case of, some fans, not Shrewsbury fans or Rotherham fans, might have seen it as, Rotherham had an off day, Shrewsbury had a great day, but it might be a bit of a fluke result. But it didn't seem that way from what I've read and certainly what people have said. It seems like you said there, it could have been more, and Salop were fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, people that weren't at the game point to the red card to Rotherham's Angus MacDonald, which was a couple of minutes after Daniel Udo's opener, but that's unjust, really, in terms of how the game went. Town were on top by that point, 11 against 11. They'd had one off the line. They'd put one just wide. This was before, Udo opened the scoring. So it was, not quite one-way traffic, but Town were well in the ascendancy. Rotherham could not deal with balls into their box. A couple of long throws, a couple of shots from distance. Town were just in the ascendancy, the better side. The red card changes things, of course it does, because Town have more, first half finishes. Town have a lot more of the ball second half than they may have done, but Town also won that game without the ball, with what they did physically. They ran all over Rotherham, to be honest. They really were too strong, too quick, and too good with the ball when they got it. The second and third goals came late, didn't they? But they were deserved, and it should have been 5 or 6. On the drive home, either side of the KFC, I enjoyed. You're counting the chances, and as say, Bowman had one off the line. Lee headed just wide. Pennington was denied by a wonder save before half time. Keeper makes an unbelievable double save from Bowman and Vela second half. A couple more of those go in, and it is the scoreline that Town realistically deserved. And I know people took note at 3-0 to Shrewsbury, didn't they? But if it was 5 or 6, people would have been like, what is going on here type thing. Rotherham are having a little bit of a wobble, aren't they? They dropped points at the Meadow when Town deserved to win, let's be fair, and they've dropped points since. And I know their fans are getting a little edgy because Wigan closed the gap to a single point. I think that still go up. I think they're a quality outfit. I know Steve Cottrell said the same. I really think that still go up, and it's just a wobble. But yeah, very, very deserving away winners Saturday.
And I know we've seen Daniel Udo and Ryan Bowman hit a bit of form again recently. I know Steve Cottrell, when they were on that sort of barren run in front of goal, he was quite rightly asked about it. I know he sort of protected his players and sometimes maybe, I don't know, got his back up about it. But I suppose, and I think some comments that fans picked out were that when he was saying about, buying goals, you have to buy goals and spend money on goals. But I suppose he more than anyone, I suppose the hierarchy at Shrewsbury will be delighted to see that, the players that they brought in the summer are now starting to gel and click, and not just defensively, but going forward.
Any Town fan, I think, who's watched them this season would agree that the recruitment in terms of certainly permanent additions, and Dave Edwards wrote this in his column on the Shropshire Star and website today and in the paper, the recruitment has been, in terms of permanent additions, excellent. You go through that 11, you go through all the permanent additions, they have all been very good. A couple, if not most of the loans have not come off this season. There were some big ones, there was one obvious big one in Sam Cosgrove that did not work, and that cost Town goals early on, didn't it? And things up front, but the players that have been bought in on good contracts, long contracts, that look here to stay, that's a real boost moving forward, isn't it? Because they've got that base, that core to hopefully sort of build on, tweak in the summer. But you're right, that those individuals, you can go through a handful of them, can't you? Morosi in goal again, Flanagan, Pennigan, centre halves, Nurse, wing back, Bennett, the other wing back, Luke Lee, player of the season, Bowman up front in the goals again. Been really good, all of them. And, that's credit to the recruitment, obviously. But yeah, they were excellent on Saturday. They have been very good for a few games. Prior to Morecambe, the 5-0 last week, Town were playing well. Didn't get the wins they'd merited for some of the good performances. But there's no doubt in the last month, 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, that performances have clicked and they've sort of gone up a gear. They've showed intent, and perhaps we're seeing them getting what they merit. And what is it, 5 points now to 12th, 5 points to mid-table with 7 games left. There is potential there, despite a tricky run-in, to achieve a very good finish. Comfortably best finished aside from Hurst. So that's got to be a target, a very realistic target.
I suppose moving forward now, it's Lincoln on Saturday. Lincoln are in and around Shrewsbury. The challenge is replicating. We've seen so many times where clubs will go and have a great result against a big side and then play someone in and around them and won't replicate it. I suppose that's the challenge now.
Well, yeah, I was going to say typical Shrewsbury there, but I've said it.
I think every fan of every club says that.
Well, maybe. I mean, obviously when I came in fresh to cover Town, I remember people telling me, we can get up for these better sides, suits them a bit, suits the way they play, the mentality sort of thing. But yeah, maybe it has been a struggle against the poorer sides. It has been, not just this season. I think historically, certain recent history. So yeah, big test really. That Lincoln still to come to the Meadow on Saturday, as you mentioned. Fleetwood is still to come. No, sorry, not Fleetwood. Let me get this right. Who's still to come to the Meadow? Doncaster, who of course look right in the mire, don't they? If not relegated yet, but all but relegated, I think. So those couple have still to come. Look at the league table, which games aren't played on the league table, are they? But look at form, momentum. You'd back Town, wouldn't you? And can they prove something by bucking the trend, by winning these games? They've at times largely struggled to beat rivals this season, haven't they? They went to Fleetwood on Boxing Day and won excellently, of course. But other than that, they've struggled at times. So yeah, a test in its own right, because when Lincoln come, I haven't looked exactly at the league table regards Lincoln, and but they're around Town, just a place or a couple below, I think, and they will want to put to bed sort of lingering fears like Shrewsbury have. So there'll be a lot on it for the visitors. I think they won't be happy with where they are in the table, just like Town aren't. I don't think Lincoln. So be an interesting game, but certainly you'd think if Town players they have in recent games, there's no reason why they can't go and sweep them aside. And to be fair, we've got to speak about Morecambe, haven't we? Speak about Town against their rivals and how they've struggled. Morecambe last week was a real, possibly line in the sand for that. We all said, God, how bad do Morecambe look here? But and that was probably the case. The second goal totally knocked it out of Morecambe, but Morecambe came to Shrewsbury scrapping for their lives. That was massive for them, and Town swept them aside, had way too much for them, scored in the right times and took the game away from them. So can they do that against Lincoln? I think Lincoln are a better side than Morecambe last week, but that's got to be the aim, hasn't it? Go and reproduce that performance. Maybe it won't lead to the same 5 goals, but you just hope it'll lead to the sufficient 2 or 3 that'll keep this little run going. I mean, extend the aggregate of 8-0 over the last couple of games. That wouldn't be bad, would it? They're right at the top of the clean sheet stakes as well, which is obviously in their favour as well for these games. So, fingers crossed. It's I hope. I think we could be in for a decent end to the season, a good run. Hopefully, extend this, build. Again, as Dave Edwards wrote today, build a bit of momentum, a bit of excitement for what sort of, could be built in the summer and beyond for next season.